We are back. Hopefully, I sound okay. We had some technical. Do I sound like the Predator or what? I mean,
You
maybe
sound marvelous. Just remember,
well, we're
Andrew, it's
back.
not how you look; it's how you sound.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. We're back for our second episode of NAL Live. Second show last night, we had Chris Siegfried, league commissioner, on. Tonight, we have a legend. And to be honest, I didn't even know he was a legend. I've been talking to him for the past month or two, and I read his bio tonight, and I was like, holy smokes, this guy's legit. So we've got Ben Bennett, head coach of the Orlando Predators. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good, but if I ever take second billing to a commissioner again, I might have you. It's on.
Your people didn't get back to me in time, so
your people, my people, our people. Yeah, I got you.
No, you know what? So I always kind of like to start these, especially like first time on the show, and obviously this is a new show, but it's like I like the fans to get to know, the coaches, the players, the people involved in the league, and just from talking to you over the past month or two, it's like, man, you have you've been around the block, and
more times than the ice cream truck.
And it's such a short, small world. Like I've always heard your name. I was telling you the other day, it's like you were down in Fort Myers. I came there after you, and some other places, know a lot of the same people. So, but what was most intriguing on your bio that you sent me was you grew up in California, right? What part of California?
Northern California, yes, sir.
Okay. You were Pop Warner All-American as a 13-year-old.
And of all the awards I've ever won in my life, that may be my favorite one, because there were before you could even be considered. First, your team had to win your conference or whatever it was, and you had to be undefeated. The second thing was you had to have straight A's, and the third thing was once you passed those first two criterion, then you had to write a series of 10 essays on certain, and I wish I would have saved those, or back in the day, if I would have made copies of them with the chisel and the stone, if I'd have made copies of them. But you had to write those essays about certain subjects, and so the first two were athletic and academic. The last part was about who you were, and we never, back then, no email and no cell phones, no nothing. The only way that I knew that I actually won the thing was when it showed up in the mail. And it was pretty in red, white, and blue, and it was just a plaque. And I'm telling you, man, you'd have thought I won the Nobel Peace Prize. That was the neatest little award, and I still have that to this day.
Seriously?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So do you remember anything about your series of essays that you did?
They were about integrity and what would you do in this situation, and friendship and stuff like that. And I do remember crying on several occasions when I wrote them, because the questions that they asked actually kind of touched me down inside, which may be one of the reasons why I think that's one of my favorite awards ever.
No, that's pretty cool, and it's cool that you kept that too. It's crazy the stuff that we remember and like we hold on to, and that's pretty cool. At that point, like, did you know you were legit at football? I mean, like, at what point did you realize that?
Well, it was interesting progression. Now, I started out my very first year, and the team, when I went down to sign up, it's called the Police Athletic League, the PAL leagues.
Okay. Yep.
And I went down to sign up, and they said, we don't have a team in your area. Well, there were about 5 kids that wanted to sign up at the same time I did, but they didn't have a team in that area. So what the league decided to do was to take all of the players that the 7 other teams cut and put them on my team. So I had all the players on my team, except for 5 of us, were all players that somebody else didn't want, weren't good enough to play for the other team, called the Red Devils. And I played quarterback, and I was number 12 because Joe Namath was my hero, man. I got beaten to death, absolutely beaten to death, and we lost every game during the regular season. Well, the interesting thing was they had what they called a bowl game. So all of the teams got to play in what they call a bowl game. And we played a team from San Carlos. And San Carlos came to play us. They were just about as crappy as we were. So it was nothing to nothing with about 10 seconds left in the game. And I threw a pass to a kid. Not that I remember this or anything. I threw a pass to a kid named Bob Orloff, who had caught every pass that I'd thrown for the entire game. And he got tackled on about the 6-yard line, but he got face masked. So our season was officially over, except for the one play of overtime that we got to run. So my head coach was a guy named Dick Ferguson. Comes, he says, Aces, and he called me Benny. He says, Benny, he goes, they're going to put everybody in the world on Orloff. He goes, I need you to throw it to Buzzard, which was a guy named Richard Baczynski. Sure enough, they had like 3 guys on Orloff, and Baczynski went zipping around the back of the end zone. I hit him for a touchdown, and we won 6-0. Well, and I have goosebumps as I'm talking about this. The really cool thing, kind of, was after I threw the touchdown and we all congratulated, I turned around to look for my dad. And here comes this whole group of parents running and screaming and yelling, they're all, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. They're all running to me. Well, they all ran right past me and picked up Baczynski and carried him off the field. But it was that little rush in my first year that allowed me, that it gave me the incentive. I was like, you know what? I really like this game, and I'm going to donate my entire existence to it. But the funny thing was, I got tired of getting beat up. So the following year, I told the coach I wanted to move linebacker and to give me 51 so I could take butt kiss. Well, I ended up playing quarterback as well because we didn't have anybody else that could throw it like I could. So primarily, I was a linebacker growing up that wore number 51. I just played quarterback because we didn't have anybody else that was better than me.
What age did you start playing?
So you start playing tackle in California back then when you were 10. So I played flag football when I was 9. I played baseball when I was 8, and I hated it because I got beaned a whole lot. But I played it because my father was a minor league baseball player, and he wanted me to play. So I played flag when I was 9. I started when I was 10. And so I played the first year with the Red Devils, and I played the next 2 years with the Vanguards, which was the middle team. And then my last year was with the Vikings. And the watershed event with that was at the beginning of that season, we had a little bitty local newspaper, and my head coach was a guy named Bob Mantilla. And Bob was the one who submitted stories to the paper. Man, it was just little 2 paragraphs. I mean, it wasn't anything big. But I'll never forget when I saw it, and it said quarterback Benny Bennett threw 2 touchdowns, and the Vikings went, and I ran into the house screaming and yelling, Mom, I'm a star. I'm a star, because my name was in the paper. Yeah, that hook was sunk deep, man. I was in right then.
Well, you know that we have made it, Ben, because we have somebody who posted that they are nude right now. So I guess they're nude watching us. Bus stop on YouTube.
Well, that's interesting. From the sweatshirt down, I'm naked too. So we're
Please don't stand. Do not.
It may be that I'm just naked emotionally. Maybe that's it.
Well, we've got.
It's funny because we were talking about this earlier. I worked TV for a while, and they used to take my teleprompter stuff that I typed up for the sports stories and stuff on there like I'm a cake, eat me, and stuff like that. Or they would moon me right before the telecast started. So I'm used to that kind of stuff.
Well, if you're out there watching, post some comments, post where you're from, post some questions for Ben. We're going to get into more of his career here. So when you jumped into high school, did you start transitioning more into that quarterback, or when did you kind of figure out that that's your spot?
Well, it was another interesting event. So I go up my very first summer practice at school, and I had a head coach named John Sepulveda, a short guy, but he was a 5th-degree black belt in judo, and he didn't really say very much. And he knew about the Pop Warner All-American thing, and people had told him that I was okay. So when I came up to the very first day, they go to issue your uniforms. And the junior varsity coach says, he says, what number do you want? I said, I want number 51. He says, well, you can't be number 51 and play quarterback. And I said, well, I'm not a quarterback. I said, I'm a linebacker. I said, I played quarterback, but I'm a linebacker. So he called Ron Gardner. He called over Sepulveda. Sepulveda comes over there. He says, Coach, he says, Mr. Bennett here wants to wear number 51 because he says he's the linebacker. Sepulveda looked at me for about 10 seconds and just had a little grin on his face, says, "You're a quarterback," and just turned around and walked away. There was no discussion. There was no argument. There was no, "Hey, coach, let me plead my case." It was just, "Hey, you're a quarterback." And I was like, "All right, great." Well, so we had in California, you had what they called the summer passing leagues, where high school teams signed up and your wide receiver, DBs, quarterbacks, and you played. It was essentially Pascal, but you had rules, and there was winners and losers, and playoffs and the whole bit. So Sepulveda said he would allow me to play quarterback. He says you probably won't get a whole lot of time. He says because we got a senior who's a heck of a player, a guy named Bill. And he said, but if he says we'll try to work you in there. And so I went in, and about the third game I was just happy to be around the older kids, man. I thought I was I was somebody. But about the third game, we were ahead, I don't know, 21 points, and Sepulveda sticks me in there. And he called a play, and we had a little skinny redheaded receiver, tall kid, Bobby Duran. He took and ran a corner route, and I dropped that thing in there about 40 yards down the field. Every head on the field turned. They're like, "Oh, who's this dude?" And I was like, Bobby Duran came back. He goes, "That was a hell of a throw." And I'm like, "All right, that's another event." First it was the Richard Brzezinski thing, and then it was the All-American Award. Things that just kind of roped me in that really mean a lot. And that, when I hit that pass, I was like, wow. I said, I might actually be pretty good at this. And I, ended up playing varsity for 3 years, which nobody in my high school had ever done. And we did a whole lot of stuff up there. I was pretty fortunate that during my sophomore year, when I was playing my second year, when I was competing with the senior for the starting job, they actually played me a little bit more. And the offensive coordinator was a guy named Al Holland. And he says, "Man," he says, "I got to tell you," he goes, "you have a pretty good knack for calling plays." He goes, "When you're on the sidelines and you make suggestions," I go, "Well, why did I think of that?" So he actually put me in one game towards the end and let me call my own plays. And we scored 3 touchdowns in the last quarter while I was in there. He goes, "Anytime you go, you're calling." So, yeah, so that was another little deal. They let me call my own plays, which in high school football is unheard of. You don't have quarterbacks calling their own plays.
Yeah. Were you like a big were you like a big film guy, or just like, were you like a big study guy, or were you just a raw athlete out there?
Well, the interest. Well, I've never been accused of being an athlete. Believe me, I'm a pretty good quarterback, but not much of an athlete. The interesting thing was that back then, film, and it really was film. It was 8mm film back then. There wasn't a big exchange between the schools. You didn't get to see somebody else, and they didn't get to see you. However, my father, after I started playing as a sophomore, he started filming the games. And what we would do after my junior and senior year, he would film the game on Friday night, stick it in to be developed on Saturday, and then it was done on Tuesday. So we'd bring the whole team over to my house. My mother would make spaghetti, and we'd sit there and watch the game tape for about 2.5 hours. And ran the projectors. If you had a good play, you might get to see that play 2 times, maybe 3 if it was a really amazing play. If you screwed up, you were going to see it over and over and over. So that was kind of the film that we did. It was more of us than it was of anybody else. That was kind of cutting edge at the time, and I'm very my father was that dedicated.
Yeah, that's big. So when did you start getting the calls from colleges? Did that happen right away?
Well, my sophomore year, I had played JV my freshman year, and I'd won all sorts of awards. But it's JV, so it's not really much anything. And my sophomore year, my coach comes to me and says, Sepulveda comes to me and says, "Hey, look," he says, he goes, "I want you to come up and play varsity." He goes, "You can play JV again. You can win all sorts of awards." He goes, "But I'm going to give you a chance to compete against Skip Lavery, who was the senior, the captain." And I said, "If you'll give me a chance, if I beat him out, you'll let me play, I'll do it." So we go in, and during preseason, it's pretty close. So we have our first scrimmage against the one of the other league's regional champions, Fremont. And it was a 4-quarter scrimmage. Controlled situations. And Sepulveda says, "I'm going to give Skip the first half, and I'm going to give you the second half." I thought, okay, that's fair. He gives Skip the first half. We're down, 28-7. And he gives Skip about half of the third quarter. And I was mad, but I didn't say anything because I'm, 16 at the time, something like that. And my head coach could tie me up like a pretzel. So I didn't say anything. He finally sticks me in. I threw 4 touchdown passes in the last quarter and a half of the game, and we beat Fremont 35-28. I thought, it's a lock. I'm starting. No such luck. He says, season opener, Skip's going to start. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I thought I was going to hit him with my car. So we go in, and we're ahead, 23-9 or something like that with about 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I go in the first play. I call an over-under route with a post over the top. And Tim Vanley Shout, who's another big, tall kid, I hit him for about an 82-yard touchdown on the first play. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. Come back the next series, and it took me about 4 plays, and I threw another touchdown. So I threw more touchdown passes in the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter than Skip did the whole game. So I thought, okay, we're opening season play. This is conference play. I got to be the guy. No such luck. So Skip started most of the season, but I managed to get in there here and there. He'd have like a shoulder pad strap bust, or he'd be a little bit ahead. Turns out I threw more touchdown passes as a backup quarterback than Skip threw as the starter the entire season. So to this day, John Sepulveda still says, I lit the fire under you by sitting you out. I'm like, no, you just kind of pissed me off, but there may be some truth.
So
not
when
that I remember any of the details or anything, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I mean, you I think you have this like written down. Well, you're waiting to see these guys again. So talk to me.
And what I was so mad after the season. I had a receiver that came up to varsity with me, kid from South Carolina named Mel Cosby, still one of my closest friends in the world. And at the time, most of the area passing records were by Steve Bartkowski, Craig Morton, and there was a guy named Andrew Hill and Mervyn Fernandez, who actually played for the Oakland Raiders for a while. Swervin' Mervyn Fernandez. They held most of the records. And I was so mad at the end of the year. I was talking to one of the reporters. He goes, are you excited about next year? I said, I promise you this. I said, Mel Cosby and I are going to destroy the record book next season. And we did. We ended up scoring a state record, or a Northern California record. We still don't know if it was a state record. We scored 510 points in 10 games. So we lit it up pretty good, and we broke all sorts of records and the whole bit. Yeah, so we
you were almost playing arena football in high school with that kind of score. I mean, so you were primed for that at an early age.
That's it, man. You got to score. Chicks dig the long ball, so you got to pitch it up as much as you can. But what was funny is we were considered a pass-happy school, and we averaged throwing the ball 14 times a game my junior year. My senior year, we averaged throwing the ball 17 times a game. There are schools now that do that much in a quarter.
I was going to say they like to sling it now. Some of these schools. That's all it's about. Well, when
they pitch it up a bunch, and it's funny because go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a little delay, I think. So.
No, I was just going to. That's all right. Everywhere I've been, they can say, "Oh, you throw it all the time." Comparatively speaking, in high school, I didn't throw it very much at all. And in college, I played for Steve Spurrier, so we pitched it around a bunch up there. But again, nothing compared to what those guys are doing these days with all the shotgun. I never took a shotgun snap. That was enough. I called in Spurrier's offense at Duke. What Spurrier would say is, he goes, when I call a play, it's a best guess at what they're going to run. He goes, if I'm in a bad play, you got to get me into a bad one. So I ended up audibling under center at the line of scrimmage as a freshman, true freshman now, about 40% of the time. Now how they take that, hey, and then they turn and look at the sidelines and they call a play from the sidelines. No, it all came out of this noodle right here, right up underneath the center. Sometimes it worked out well, sometimes not so much.
What made you decide to go to Duke? I'm sure. I know that you had a lot of offers and getting recruited from all over.
Well, I tell you, it's an interesting deal. So in California, I was real close to Stanford, and I'd followed Stanford growing up, Cal Berkeley as well, and both those schools threw the ball. So back then, you could only take 6 official visits, and an official visit means school can pay for you to fly in. you can take as many unofficial visits as you want to, which means you can go to, if I wanted to go see UCLA 5 weekends in a row, I could, because it's unofficial. So I took trips to USC, UCLA, San Diego State, and I made a trip in an unofficial to Cal. Well, I took my first official visit to the University of Colorado with Chuck Fairbanks as the head coach, and I thought, man, this is a great school. It's beautiful. This may be my spot, but it was my first one. So my mom, who was a Duke grad, said, look, you have to save one trip to go to school at Duke. And the exact words out of my mouth were, Mom, I'm a quarterback, not a point guard. Duke had just been in the Final Four and the championship, lost to Kentucky. But I promised her I'd save a trip to Duke. So when I went on my trip to Duke, plane lands and we're on the tarmac and they're rolling the wheels up. And everybody's like, is that a marching band out front? Sure enough, Duke had brought their marching band, had them out on the tarmac. Whole coaching staff was there, cheerleaders, players, the whole shebang. The next day, after I took my SAT, hungover at 8 o'clock in the morning, I went and sat in the front row and watched Duke and Carolina play basketball in the senior day game. If that's enough, while I was going in to meet the head coach, there's a fella standing out in the hall who's on his interview trip. And he was a little-known first-time offensive coordinator named Steve Spurrier. Well, I'd known Steve because I grew up in the Bay Area because he played back up with the 49ers. So I knew who he was. And I said, hey, Coach, how are you? I said, hey, Steve, how are you? He says, I said, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm on my interview. And I said, well, I'm on my recruiting trip. He says, well, are you planning on coming here? I said, well, I don't know. I said, are you planning on taking the job? He says, if they offer it to me, he goes, I'm going to take it. He goes, and if I take it, he goes, we're gonna pitch the ball around. We're gonna throw it around a bunch, is what he said. And I said, all right. So between the ability to, and I felt like, cocky as I am, I felt like that I was better than the guys that were there, at least in Spurrier, what was going to be Spurrier's offense. I'm pretty cocky. I know you'll find that hard to believe. So I figured I could start for 4 years. I knew I was going to get to throw the ball around. I'm getting one of the best educations in the world. I really felt like I could be part of building something. And so I decided when I got back home, I told my family that I was going to Duke. And my mom was tickled to death. My dad was tickled to death. He goes, but you have another trip scheduled to Penn State. And I said, well, I'm just not going to go. He said, then you call that man and tell him that you're not going to go. Yeah, little did I know. So I called the recruiting coordinator at Penn State. And I said, and I wish I could remember his name, but I told him, I said, listen, I said, I took my trip to Duke. I said, I've decided that's where I'm going to go to school. I said, so I don't want to waste your time or your plane ticket. I said, so I'm canceling my trip. And the guy says, wait a minute. He says, you want me to go in and tell Joe Paterno, that the kid from California, where we don't recruit, is canceling his trip so he can go play ball at Duke? He goes, I'm going to give you Paterno's direct line. You pick him up and call him. I was like, so I told my dad that's what he meant. My dad goes, well, he goes, if that's what the man wants you to do, I didn't have to do it. The guy called back, said he understood and the whole bit. But I didn't realize the gravity of having to tell Joe Paterno, hey, by the way, the kid that was coming on your recruiting trip has decided to go to Duke. I didn't realize the big juxtaposition there. So, yeah, that
guy got
on
fired.
pins and needles for a little bit.
Yeah, he was fired.
He may have. Who knows? Donald Trump got him. You fired.
So how'd you like Duke coming from the West Coast?
It was different, Bubba. Let me tell you. It was, I'm the California surfer guy. I'm the one that had the Trans Am. And, I was used to doing things the California way. And in North Carolina, things just move way, way slower. And whole cocky attitude that I thought I knew every damn thing and nobody could tell me a single thing. I carried that out there. And because there was no professional sports anywhere close. You had the Redskins up in DC and you had the Falcons down in Atlanta. College football and college basketball were pretty big. Well, Duke football had been down for a long, long time. So this kid coming from California and, Corvette, I bought a Corvette when I was a freshman. They didn't give it to me like everybody thinks.
The boosters?
So I bought a Corvette when I was there. And
how the hell you get a Corvette?
Here's the quarterback California the surfer boy riding around in a topless Corvette. Yeah. Well, what was funny is that I started out at Duke. We had 7 quarterbacks on the roster, and to start the season, my freshman year, I was 7th on the depth chart. Now, within a week, they had moved 3 of the guys there to other positions, but I was still 4th. So it took me 2 weeks before I earned the starting job. And I started as a true freshman in Spurrier's offense, which, he's learning how to teach it, and I was trying to learn how to execute it. And we had some stub toes, but, we eventually got the hang of it. But I really liked the fact that I was going to have education. I liked the fact that I was, for lack of a better term, kind of the big guy on campus for a little bit. Duke hadn't gotten a quarterback of my stature from California ever. So when I came out there, they kind of hung the hopes of the program on me, which, again, I have no problem with. So I had a good time.
Was Spurrier, was that his first coordinator position?
Yep, that was his first job, and I was his first quarterback. And people ask, what was it like playing quarterback for Steve Spurrier? It was way worse than anybody ever thinks. However, the knock that Steve Spurrier gets is that he doesn't care about his players and that he doesn't care about the game, that he's always out playing golf and doing this and that and the other, which couldn't be any further from the truth. That guy is an absolute genius who cares about the game and his players way, way more than anybody will ever give him credit for. Now, we butted heads, believe me on this one. He kicked me off the offensive field twice my freshman year, told me I'd never play quarterback again. He goes, go to the defensive field, see if they got a place for you. Because we just, he would scream and yell, and I wasn't used to being screamed and yelled at, especially when I thought I was right. So once we figured out how to work a little more symbiotically, we did some pretty good things.
What was he there your entire career at Duke?
No, he was there my freshman, sophomore, and junior year.
Okay.
And one of the things that I tell people, I set a whole bunch of NCAA records my freshman year. I threw for 468 yards against Wake Forest as a true freshman. But the one thing that I probably shouldn't be proud of, when I got there, Duke's career record, which means during your entire career, the career interception record was 32. I threw 25 my freshman year alone. So I almost broke the Duke career record for interceptions in 1 year. Now,
Damn.
I was pretty fortunate that I also threw for over 2,000 yards, which no other freshman had ever done. I had a bunch of touchdowns, and we were actually in some ball games that nobody thought we'd be in. And so they stuck with me, and obviously it got better. But, that first year, there was some real big ups and some real big downs.
So out of your 42 Duke records that you have, how many were for bad stuff? Any?
Listen, I just confessed one of the most painful things in my life, and now you want to dig deeper into that wound? Thanks a lot, Andrew.
How can you have 42
for years because of that?
How can you have 42 records? What are you guys counting there?
Well, they were attempts and completions and touchdowns and obviously interceptions, yards, completion percentage, just a whole bunch of different things. Total offense factored into it. So there was a bunch of stuff. Jim McMahon finished his career with 66 NCAA records, I think, something like that. He was unbelievable. Damn. So there's a lot of records that we played Navy, and we played Navy, and we went to the no huddle offense, the 2-minute drill with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter. And in the fourth quarter, I completed 20 out of 22 passes, which was a record for the most passes completed in a quarter. Like I said, guys are doing that all over everywhere now. But, so there were some neat records, the freshman records. Wake Forest, I was 38 out of 62 for 468 yards and 3 touchdowns. We lost because we couldn't stop anybody. But, so I had a bunch of good records that I'm proud of. I had the interception record.
How was the all-time passing leader? How long did that stand? Because, I'm sure you weren't slinging it like some of these teams are now. They're just, hurry up, throw the ball, 80% of the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, it lasted about 11 months until a midget from Boston College came along and beat it. Flutie broke my record the following year. And and when I set the record, I got a little note. Hey, Bennett becomes the NCAA passing leader. The entire next season, every broadcast was Flutie's pursuit of Bennett. And I'm like, God, you got to be kidding me. But when he broke my record, I sent him a telegram, which would say how old I am. I sent him a telegram that said, congratulations on setting the record. I said, there's no one in college football that deserves it more. I said, and if they don't give you the Heisman Trophy this year, they ought to quit giving the thing away. Sincerely, Ben Bennett, Duke University, class of '84. Never heard from him, but again, that's neither here nor there. But, I mean, the kid's a great player. No question. He's one of the best players that's ever played the game. Get your record broken by him. It stings a little bit, but still, it's a pretty good dude to break your record.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's, definitely a great accomplishments on there. I didn't, like I said, looking through all your stuff, I was really impressed. And when did you kind of, get that itch for like, okay, I might, am I going to get drafted? Am I going to play at the next level? I mean, was that kind of like a process from your freshman year on, or, when did that really intensify and the pressure start to,
Not really. It wasn't really till my junior year when I played for Spurrier, and we were 6-5, but we were a couple of plays away from being 9-2. We beat Tennessee at Tennessee. We beat South Carolina at South Carolina. We beat some pretty good teams, and I started getting into the the national publications, and the kid at Duke is pretty good, blah blah blah, and then I made a bunch of preseason All-American teams my senior year. So that's when it really started to kind of take shape for me. Up until after my junior year, I didn't really envision myself as a pro player. I just kind of figured I got 4 years at Duke, and let's hope the best for afterwards. But it turns out I had a shot.
And then, so what went into kind of the decision, like the USFL selected you played there a little bit, you were in the NFL as well. Like, how did all that kind of transpire, and what decisions did you have to make that
Well, I thought when the USFL came around, I thought that it was going to be the most amazing thing, because Spurrier left after my junior year and took the Bandits. So I just decided I was going to end up playing there. I knew the offense. I knew I could play, and the USFL was offering pretty good money. Turns out Jacksonville got an expansion team the following year, and what they did in the USFL back then was they gave you certain schools that were relatively close to where you were. So I was the number one territorial pick of Jacksonville. Unfortunately, the head coach there was Lindy Infante. Lindy and I never really we never saw eye to eye. I set a couple of USFL passing records in my second game there, and he got on me because during a timeout I was kind of shaking to a song, and he was like, "Yeah, we don't dance here." I was like, "Okay." They fined me like 30 times for stuff that I didn't even know I'd done wrong. And so the following year, it was probably one of the tougher years I've ever had, because my mother, she passed away 4 days before we opened preseason camp in Jacksonville. And for about the next, year and a half, 2 years, my heart really just wasn't much into it. And, I just didn't do the thing. I didn't make the sacrifices I needed to do to be a pro quarterback at that point. I was very disillusioned with the game. I'd never been cut before. So things like that weighed on me. And my mom not being around and the whole bit, not excuses, just contributing factors to the fact that I kind of lost my way a little bit. And then I came back and I signed with the Oilers, and the offensive coordinator told me he was going to move me up behind Warren Moon, and I was going to be the number 2 quarterback. And I'm like, great. And then Jerry Glanville cut me before the day before the final cuts. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And so I quit football for a little bit, and I pretty much it wasn't fun for me anymore. I decided that was it. I was going to hang up, and it took me about not being out of the game to realize I really did want to play. And I was fortunate. That's when the Arena League came back around. So the strike came around. I played with the Cowboys during the strike. And there was a bunch of guys that played arena football that same year, and they were like, "Hey, this is a great game. You ought to come play." And that's how I got involved in arena. But I managed to play parts of 5 seasons in the NFL. I played a season and a half in the USFL, played a season with 2 teams in the World League. And I played 10 years with the Arena League. So I played 17 seasons roughly in 13 years in 4 different leagues.
Your body hurting now or what?
The body hurts all the time, Bubba. It's not just now. Yeah, I've had arthritis in my right knee since I was 28. I had a broken bone in my left wrist that I broke my 3rd game my freshman year, and that's got a screw in it. And so that's been broken for a long time. You get a lot when you play that much time, or that many seasons and that many snaps, excuse me, in that short period of time, you're gonna bring home some bumps and bruises. So I've got my share.
And that turf is not forgiving either. That can definitely.
Listen, in the Arena League, it's not just the turf; it's the wall. The wall is undefeated. As many guys have hit that thing, the wall is still unblemished.
So how did you transition into that arena? You have instant success in there? Or did you have a learning curve, kind of learn the new game?
No, actually, I was very fortunate. When I was playing with the Houston Oilers, my buddy Jim Kelly said, "Hey, come live at my place. I got a nice big house out in Sweetwater." So I was with him, and he was playing with the Houston Gamblers, and Mouse Davis had taught him the run and shoot. Well, Mouse Davis had also become in 1987 the competition coordinator for the Arena Football League. And he was the one that made the recommendation that I go play there. And I thought, all right, well, I don't really have a whole lot else going on. It sounds like fun. And as it turns out, they originally told me that I wasn't going to be allowed to go to camp because they were taking 240 guys to camp, having them try out for 3 days, and then they were going to have a draft. And the guy that was in charge of signing players, a guy named Bob Gates, and Bob Gates said, "We're full." And I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "You're telling me I'm not more qualified than 32 other quarterbacks that can't make it in any other league?" I said, "How many of them have my credentials?" He's like, "Well, we got this Willie Totten guy who had played it with Jerry Rice at Mississippi Valley State." He goes, "And then we got another," and I'm like, "You can't even think of guys that are more qualified for me." I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll pay for my own ticket to fly in there, and I'll try out. And if I'm not better than those guys, I'll pay to fly myself home." So Mouse Davis got on the phone and chewed him out pretty good. So they sent me a ticket. I ended up being the number 2 player taken. We went 10-0 in our first 10 games in Chicago, and I was the MVP of the season. So I caught on pretty quickly. But the interesting thing is the arena game is so much quicker, and all of the things that Spurrier had taught me about playing in the outdoor game, you can throw out about half of them when you move indoors, when you play in the Arena League. And so I really thought there was going to be a bigger learning curve, but I was pretty fortunate. I had some pretty good guys around me and had a good coach in Perry Moss that taught me the game pretty quick.
Yeah, no, that's great. You've been around some great coaches. That's for sure. When you were playing arena football, did you still have kind of that dream or desire to get back into the NFL? Or were you kind of at the point where, hey, I want to stay focused on, arena football. I'm having success here. This is fun.
Well, you always want to move to the next level because you always want to prove yourself. And I got at the end of the 88 season, I was the MVP in the whole bit, but I hurt my knee. Well, about November, the Chicago Bears lost both of their starting QBs, and Perry picked up the phone and said, "Look, I got a kid down there who can play." So I went up and finished the season up there with them, and really had a blast. Did some good things, but it took me a couple of days or a couple of practices to get out of the arena football habits and back into the outdoor game deal. Plus, it was stinking degrees with wind chill dropping it down to 2 when I was practicing. So yeah. I didn't miss the call, believe me on that one. But yeah, I really would like to have gotten back up there. But once I got into the Arena League and I started doing some of those things, the injuries started mounting up. I just didn't think I'd pass an NFL physical. So I was happy where I was playing.
All right. So I saw this and I got to ask about this. So you also were a sports anchor. while you were playing still? How the hell does that happen?
Well, ironically, during the 88 season, or after the 88 season, I was back at Duke, and I was rehabbing my knee injury. I had hurt my knee in the championship game. And while I was there, I met the guy that was in charge of Jefferson Pilot Sports. And he said, look, we've got Ken Willard and Haven Moses that are doing the ACC Game of the Week for us. We'd like you to come audition. And I said, well, okay, what do I need to do? He said, well, just come talk about the game. He says, we got another guy that we want to audition for the play-by-play. He says, so you just do the color and we'll listen to what you have to say, see how good you are. So I did my audition tape, and they said, well, all right, we're going to invite you back in and let you go live that was 87, 88. They said, we're going to let you go live for the rest of the season. I said, okay, great. Then they hired me the following year. I did a year's worth of ACC games. Shortly after that, ESPN bought out my contract. They said, hey, look, we want you to come do stuff with us for ESPN. So I was up there for 3 or 4 years, and I did the Big Ten Game of the Week. I did the NFL draft. I did some sideline reporting. I did a little bit of everything. Had a blast up there. Well, turns out when I was playing down here in Orlando in 1990, either 93 or 94, I'm not sure which one, one of the sports guys with Channel 6 was not very good. And I ended up talking to the guy who was the director, like in charge of the whole station. He said, I understand you have some TV experience. I said, yes, sir. It's mostly live TV, doing games. I said, color commentary. Have you ever done anything like this on the news? I said, no. I said, I was offered something up in Chicago way back. I said, but it never transpired, so I haven't really done it. So the guy says, well, look, he goes, we want you to come and do a test shoot. I did the test shoot. He said, we want you to be the weekend sports anchor along with Mike Storms. And I'm still playing at this point. So I said, well, you got to tell me what the schedule is. So the schedule was, during the arena season, I would be over into our facility by about 7:30 to watch film with Perry. After we watched film with the team, we'd practice. I was usually done by about 1. I'd shoot up to the TV station. I'd do a story for that night. And then we played the games on Friday night. And then I did the weekend anchor on Saturday. So I went in Saturday morning, prepared the shows, did the 6, the 10, and the 11 on Saturday and Sunday night. Then I went right back to the whole thing on Mondays. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hours, and it was a lot of moving around, but I kind of like being busy. The only thing that was a drawback to doing that, and I had a blast doing both, was that my daughter was born very shortly after I had started that. So I didn't get to spend as much time with her as I'd like, but I saw her in the mornings, I saw her in the evenings, and when I had free time, I hung around with her. So, it all worked out pretty cool.
Yeah. Were your teammates busting your balls all the time about that? Like, oh, there's Ben on TV again.
Constantly. Well, but I got to say nice things about them, so that helped kind of salve things over. I caught a lot of heck from the other sportscasters because I didn't know there were unwritten rules in doing the sportscasting, and I broke a couple of them, and I got some phone calls. But again, it was I think they understood that I really just didn't know what the hell I was doing. So it wasn't like I was breaking protocol just to irritate them. I just made mistakes because I didn't know them. So that happens.
It's the way to learn. Little hazing by the news crew.
But it wasn't angry. It was just more of, hey, you're not supposed to do this. It was like one time Buddy Ward called me and said, look, because I was showing highlights of the Magic game while the game was still going on. I said, here's so-and-so. And they're like, can't, I guess it was some type of SEC rule or something. I don't know what it was, FCC, where if another station is broadcasting the game, you can't show highlights on your station. Didn't know that. And I don't know how I would have known that. But so once he showed me that, showed me the ropes a little bit, I got the hint. So that was a lot of fun.
You a manual or something? I mean, come on.
I had fun, and I would tell them, quite honestly, look, I had no – when they would say something like that, I'm like, well, gee, I certainly apologize because I really had no idea. And, it was believable because I'd never done it before. So.
Well, you had a Hall of Fame playing career. I mean, Arena Football Hall of Fame, Duke Hall of Fame, ACC Hall of Fame, or you have an award with ACC though, right?
Well, they call it being voted into voted a legend of the
Okay.
ACC, and
Yeah.
so that actually came in the same year as the Duke Hall of Fame. So I was
Nice.
recognized as a legend of the ACC the same year as I went into the Duke Hall of Fame.
So you're at the end of your
That Duke
career
Hall of Fame, man, that was. No, I was just going to say the Duke Hall of Fame thing was kind of interesting because there were 5 of us that went in, Coach K being one of them, as well as Bobby Hurley. But the ironic thing is there was 2 girls in that class, Jenny Shashiraporn, who was a golfer, and Vanessa Wade, who was a tennis player. Both of those 2 had substantially better resumes than I ever put up. Vanessa Wade was 4-time All ACC, 4-time ACC Player of the Year, 4-time All American. Jenny Shashiraporn went to the U.S. Women's Open as a 19-year-old and took Se-Ri Pak, or maybe 18 years old, and took Se-Ri Pak to 19 holes of overtime golf in the Women's U.S. Open. And both those girls were in the class, sweet as you could be. But the fact that I was on the stage with those 2, Bobby Hurley and Coach K, he came in my freshman year, and I've known him for 40 years. That was kind of special to go into the Hall of Fame in that class.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is legends, man. I mean, you are a legend. Don't let that go to your head. I will chop you back down.
I kind of look at it as I look at it as 3 legends and me. I'm the player to be named later.
Cash considerations. So you're playing. How did you transition to coach? And obviously, a lot of times quarterbacks, you're seeing the field, so you're the leader out there. So transitioning into coaching is natural. But was that just the end of your career? Did you have an injury? What kind of pushed you into that direction?
Oh yeah. Well, I was fortunate that I played almost 36 years old, which as a QB is a long time to play, especially as beat up as I was. But it was a neck injury that ended my career in '97. And I went back and I had 1 class left to get my Duke degree, so I did that. And then, I was looking around, possibly TV. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I got a call from a guy that a pretty good coach in the Arena League named Rick Frazier. He was up in Milwaukee. Said, "Look," he goes, "I got a spot for an offensive coordinator. Do you think you can handle it?" And I said, "Well, I called all my own plays for 10 years in that league." I said, "You were pretty good every time we played you." I said, "So you oh yeah, I let him have it, both barrels." I said, "So I think I can do it." And we ended up the guy that was with me ended up setting he broke my Arena Football all-time passing record. He had his best season that he'd ever had. And we're the number 2 scoring offense in the entire league. Unfortunately, we were 7-7 because we couldn't stop anybody. We were 7-1 in games where we scored 51 points or more. That'll tell you how bad our defense was. We couldn't stop anybody. We're losing games 68-66. Just unbelievable. So yeah, that's how I got started. I'd been calling plays for a long time, high school, essentially in college, and then in the Arena League for 10 years. So calling plays and pointing guys in the right direction came pretty naturally.
How many? I know you have at least one. Any other champion? You have 1 championship with Florida Firecats. Any other championships?
I won 1 coaching. I went to this is kind of a dubious record to hold. I took 3 different teams, only quarterback in Arena Football history to take 3 different teams to 5 Arena Bowls and never won a single one. So that's another 25 interceptions my freshman year record type thing. But the neat thing about coaching is that, and I thought when we won the championship down in Fort Myers, that, hey, listen, the monkey's finally off my back. It's going to be about me. But it really wasn't. I was just so excited for the players and to see how excited they were about stuff that struck me as kind of odd because I didn't really think it would be like that. And it turned out it really was. It was more about the players than it was about me. And I was happy to see them win it. And I was happy to get a ring, and I was happy to get the monkey off my back. By that point, it become a gorilla.
So do you still you ever talk to any of the guys from back, on that championship team, or really from any of those teams back in the day?
Well, they were trying to. I call one or two of them every now and again. We were trying to have a Zoom call of all the guys on that team during COVID, but it didn't work out. The irony is, one of my defensive coordinator for the Predators this year is going to be Roy Stabler, who was a middle DS on that team when I was playing there, and the offensive line coach is a guy that was a two-way offensive defensive lineman in Cape Fear that same year, had 27 and a half sacks, E.J. Burt. So it's a really, really small world arena football bubble. And so I've got two of the three guys on my team were AF2 guys. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, not only that did you coach Jason Gibson?
Yeah. So funny story. Jason Gibson he's one of the best guys that's in arena football at whatever level it is. He's a great dude. He's a great coach, and he's good for the league. So I'm coaching back at Duke, and Greensboro, which is where I was born, ironically, they have an AF2 team, and the guy that ran the arena over there, Mike Brown, came over and talked to my head coach at the time at Duke, Franks, during the coaches convention there at the Greensboro Arena, and he said, "Listen," he says, "do you mind if we borrow your guy, Ben Bennett, to come help us over here?" He goes, "We're not playing very well." And he goes, "I'd like to get his input as to why we're not playing well." So Carl says, "Well, he's got to go recruit in the month of May." He says, "But after that, if he wants to do it, he can." So we worked out a deal. And the funny thing was, I'm keeping track of how they're doing while I'm gone. The 4 games before I got there, they lost 68-13. They lost 62-7. And the only touchdown they scored was a defensive touchdown. They recovered a fumble in the end zone. They lost 103-3, and then they lost 88-12 to Arkansas. So I get there thinking I'm just going to be a consultant. I'm going to help out and just kind of point guys in the right direction. I walk into the meeting room, and there's 4 high school coaches with notepads just sitting there waiting for me to start talking. And I'm like,
whoa, so I'm the head coach.
Kind of taking over here, I guess. So, well, in theory, I was just the offensive coordinator.
Right.
But I pretty much pointed everybody where to go. And the funny thing is, Jason Gibson was a wide receiver and a DB on that team. And so we went into the very first game. We had 3 days of practice. We went into the very first game. I had 2 running plays. I had a quarterback sneak and a fullback toss, and I had 3 pass plays. And they were essentially the same pass play, except that one was a 3-step drop, one was a 5-step drop. We scored 48 points in the game, which they hadn't even come close to all season. And on the last play of the game, if my quarterback had done what I told him to do, which is to look off, if you're running a post from the left side, you want to look off the front side corner. If you're running a post from the right, you look off the left corner. So I told him, I said, look at that corner, where it's going. I said, if the front side corner is dropped back, I said, dump it underneath, and that guy will run for a touchdown. Sure enough, our guy goes on the post. He shoots wide open. The backside corner falls off, and he throws it right to our guy. But unfortunately, their guy was standing there. And the guy that was standing underneath, who nobody was within 20 yards of him, was Jason Gibson. And Gibson was fast now. And if they throw him the ball underneath, he's probably going to score a touchdown, and we win that game. But we won a bunch more and scored some touchdowns, and so we had a lot of fun.
Well, what he told me is, he said that you basically came in, kind of really saved the day, and you basically implemented like 4 plays the rest of the season. And he's like, those 4 plays are the core to his playbook. So that impact that you made in that short period of time is, Gibson's been there 15 plus years. So that's pretty cool to hear when he told me that the other day.
Sure. Well, and the funny thing is about it, coaches, we put way more value on ourselves than we really need to. Arena football, it's a game of matchups. If your guy's better than their guy, throw him the ball. If he's not, then throw it somewhere else. And we can dress things up and do all sorts of different sneaky things, but in the end, is can you protect your quarterback? Can you knock down the other guy's quarterback? And can you not turn the ball over? I mean, those are the three basic tenets I learned from Perry Moss my very first year. And that's what most of the successful coaches will do. Les Moss, who's Perry's son, has won championships and done all sorts of amazing things. He keeps it simple. There's a lot of guys that have been around the league a long time that do the same things. It's just how good of players do you get and how well do you execute?
So you went through, you were, head coach in AF2 for a while as well. So you had like a 11, 12-year coaching career, and then you took some time off. How tough was that when you were kind of out of, coaching? Because pretty much, up until about 2010, football has probably been every season since you were probably, a young kid.
Yep. For life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting because I went back as the offensive coordinator for the Predators. Brett Muncy was the head coach, and he had fired his offensive coordinator, called me in, and I finished the last 10 games. And we won some games, but not as many as I would like to have. And I got back into it, and the irony was I was doing two jobs there, too. I was doing the Predator stuff in the morning, working for David Moss Chevrolet in the afternoon and early evening. So I'm used to doing the two job shuffle. But after that happened, my father actually passed away during that season. He passed away at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the day that we played Tampa. And I had kind of been chasing the dream, and our team would fold, and you get fired. I've never actually been fired from a head coaching job, but the jobs fold up, and you end up going to another city. And when I was younger, that was fun, but it just kind of wore on me. So after my father passed away, and I looked around at the coaching opportunities, there's only one job that I wanted, and that was the Orlando job. And it didn't look like I was going to get it anytime soon because the owner there didn't much like me. And so I thought, you know what? Peter Pan's got to grow up eventually. So I got my real estate license, and I started working for Wyndham. And I worked for Wyndham for 5.5 years and got to the point where I was pretty successful. And lo and behold, what pops back up? Kenny McIntyre calls me and goes, hey, I bought the Predators. I can't score any points. You got to come in and help me. And so that's how I got back into this whole thing, was coming in to work for that bonehead. And then after the season was over, I talked to the commissioner, and he was like, look, let's get you in charge of this whole thing. And Ron and Nate, we all got in the same room, decided it was going to be something we wanted to do. So I finally get the one job in the entire world that I want. Yay, I'm the head coach in Orlando. Oh,
but you're not playing this year.
Called COVID.
Yeah.
That's funny sense of humor. Ha, Ben, congratulations. Sit down for a little bit.
Yeah. Just wait.
But we're all right. We're going to have some fun. Yeah, we'll get things going this year. We'll get people back in the stands. We're going to win some ball games. I'm going to call all the plays I called when Jason Gibson was there, and we're going to beat him up, and he's going to cry. But I'll give him a sympathetic shoulder to cry upon because he's a good guy, and I like him.
No, I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, I live here in Central Florida, so I see all the stuff
you're out there. I love you.
What's that? All right.
The thing is, when I was playing quarterback here, I was always very ingrained in the community. A lot of charity appearances, a lot of worked with handicapped kids, Children's Make-A-Wish, Give the Kids the World, that kind of stuff. That I do that stuff not for the adoration or the notoriety. I do that because it's the right thing to do. And I got pretty well involved in the community, and I love the people here, and I think they kind of have an affection for me. So doing this, it seemed like the right thing to do. We want people to have fun when they come back out and watch us.
Yeah. A couple questions from people online. Bill on LinkedIn, he asks if you would have preferred the Predators play in a more intimate arena than Amway. Amway is a big arena. It's beautiful. I think it's probably the nicest facility in the league. What are your thoughts on facility?
Well, interesting question, because you're right. The Amway is state of the art. It's unbelievable, and we're fortunate to be able to play there. But if you ever saw a game in the old arena, you would understand what he's talking about. The people were right on top of you. They were drinking beer like they were getting. That was their job. There was all sorts of things flying around in the stands. There was clothes coming off, and people were nuts. And it was a gigantic party. And oh, by the way, football game broke out in the middle, and it just so happened we beat the crap out of most everybody we played. So everybody had a good time.
Just got Karen from Albany says hi. Looking forward to seeing you up in Albany. Everybody wants to beat
Karen Zada from up in New York.
Yeah. So you got her. You got Matthew.
It's like Mike Tyson said. Everybody's got a plan until they get hit. Karen's she's another arena lifer. She's been around our league for a long, long time, and done a lot of good things. She's a sweet girl.
Well, the one thing I just wanted to bring up with the Predators, which I saw on the website, was you have season tickets starting at $98 in the lower bowl of Amway Center. So great deals there. Anything else that you guys have, in the works? A lot of people are always asking about tryouts. You going to have tryouts anytime soon?
Yeah, let me go back to the ticket thing first. What we did, and I say we, Ron, Nate, myself, when we started kicking this thing back off, what we wanted to do was we wanted to give everybody a chance to get back into this thing full swing. And so we made every seat that was in row 7 up $98 for the entire season. Now, that was for the 2019 season, and that was long before COVID hit. So our prices have gone up substantially, but we're still kind of honoring that, even though we'll have 7 games this year instead of 6. Imagine being able to go see 7 games in the state-of-the-art Amway Arena and watching professional football, and you're paying about $14 a ticket. I mean, you can't do that. And we're still honoring that until the end of the year, and then tickets will go back up because, like everybody else, we got to make a few bucks. So if you're out there, this is not a sales technique. Get your tickets before they get more expensive, and you'll be happy you did so. The second thing you mentioned was the tryouts. Obviously, with COVID and the large groups of people getting together, it's been difficult to do that. But I think with the vaccine and everything, excuse me, we're going to try to do a tryout maybe about the 3rd week of January. We're still in the formative stages of that. There's a lot of good players out there and a lot of kids that want to give it a chance. I got 2 buddies of mine. One is 52, one's 47. They're both in way, way worse shape than I am, and they want to come try out. They know they're probably going to have to do the 40-yard dash in 2 different parts. But, whether you're a guy that wants to get out there and see if you really can run a 4.4, like you've been telling everybody in the bars for 20 years, or if you're a guy that is a young guy that maybe really just wants to get a shot and feel like you've been overlooked. Arena football has spawned a myriad of guys that have gone on to higher level and even played in the NFL. But even if you don't make it up to the next level, I can tell you from a guy who played 10 years in this league, it's an absolute blast to play. And you couldn't think of a better place to play than Orlando and in front of their fans.
Well, and I think too, a lot of times if you aren't out there and seeing, I mean, you're always recruiting, coaches are always out there looking for players. So you're going to sign players, but there's always guys that have different stories that, things didn't work out or this or that, but they're phenomenal. And these tryouts are the place that they get the opportunity. And, sometimes you hear horror stories because people just hold these tryouts, but, I know talking with you and some of the other coaches in the league and, how even some of them have made teams because of tryouts, and you got to get out there in front of the coach, the coaching staff, and prove yourself. Because, with social media, I mean, I could put up some great workout videos, and I'm, I could maybe slim myself up on TikTok or something.
You got it. No, you're out. You got to be seen to get noticed. Now, I'm going to give you 2 quick stories. Tony Scott was a kid that had never played college ball anywhere, came out to one of our tryouts and was fast as hell, but he was kind of small. And Perry Moss said, all right, look, we'll pay you a couple $100 a week to be a practice player. And every practice, he just beat somebody up. He would cover them and run them down, and every play was 100% full speed. Well, we lost 4 defensive specialists that year, and we played Tony only because we didn't have anybody else. And Tony ended up leading the league in interceptions. Played about 2 or 3 more years before he got hurt, but literally at one house, and no one had ever heard of him because he hadn't played since high school. Better story is a guy named Reggie Swinton, played in Arkansas, went to one of their tryouts and got picked up by Arkansas. Reggie was living in a car and literally was fishing for dinner. And he got a tryout with the Arkansas Twisters, had a hell of a season with them, got called up to a tryout with I think it was the Vikings. It might have been either the Vikings or the Cowboys. Whichever team picked him up first, he ended up signing to go to training camp. He made the team, had a pretty decent season, and then signed a 2-year deal the following year for $1 million, so $500,000 a year. So if he was with the Lions first, he signed the deal with the Cowboys second, or if he was the Cowboys first, it was the Lions second. But the guy went from literally living in his car and fishing for his dinner to the AF2 and played a season there, got noticed, got a shot, and moved up and played in the NFL. And the thing is, people look at this league, I'd never play in that league. It's, it's Bush, it's this, that, and the other. Believe me, there have been NFL guys that have come into this league and gotten their rear ends handed to them because they thought they were better than what this game is. So it's a very, very good launching pad if you have the ability. If people see you play, they're going to notice you. But you got to get out there and play before you get noticed.
Yep. Well, if you're a player and you want to try out, go to the website, click on team, click on tryout, and fill out your information. That goes right to coach. As soon as there's tryout information, coach is going to be sending an email out to everybody with all the details. But one last thing, I know you got to go. It's a big night. Who do you have in tonight's game?
Well, you should people need to know why it's a big night, because my Duke Blue Devils, ranked number 6, are playing number 5 Illinois tonight at 9:30. Go Duke!
So what's the prediction?
I want this to be the one rallying cry out of the entire COVID mess that we've all made. Free Joe Exotic. He must be set free. Carol Baskin must be stopped.
So you're a big, what was that, Tiger King? You're a big Tiger King fan. Appreciate it. No.
But listen, I heard people talking about it. I thought that may be the stupidest show I've ever heard of in my life. I watched an episode of it and I was hooked, man. I got my own.
I would binge watching that like crazy.
Oh, you're not kidding. I have watched everything there is to watch during this COVID thing.
We need to let's take a field trip down to Carol Baskin's place, like sometime, you and I.
That's where the hoodies and the whole bit, the ski mask. Yeah, we're gonna get Carol. All her fault.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you joining me, man. It's been fun. Like I said, man, you are a legend. I appreciate that not going to your head. Keep up the good work. You're getting the Predators back on track and being local here, man. I want to see that arena packed. So just keep doing what you're doing, man. It's working.
Well, and we're working on it. And, the funny thing, you say it hasn't gone to my head. 100% it's gone to my head. I've just learned how to hide it pretty well.
That's the key. That's the key. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. We will be back next Tuesday. We've got Coach Rez from Carolina Cobras coming on. And Coach Rez actually played in a league I was league president of way back in, I think, 2006 is when he started. So it's going to be fun talking to him. But thanks again, Coach. We'll see you guys next week.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for tuning in. All 11 of you who did. Love you.